Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the daily grind. And I mean the daily grind. We're going to use the grinder. We're going to talk about making hamburgers and making sausage and being in control. The great thing about grinding your own meat is that you're in control. You decide how much or how little fat you want to use in your mix. You decide what kind of herbs and spices you want to use in your mix. So I'm going to give you some basic starting points, some places where you can jump off and start experimenting on your own. As you can see behind me, my grinder is on my KitchenAid. I know not everybody can afford a KitchenAid, not everybody has access to a KitchenAid. They have hand crank ones that'll give you a workout, and they attach right to your kitchen table with a big screw on the bottom. They also make motorized ones that can cost as little as $60. Maybe if you find them on sale, you might be able to pick them up for $50. I would probably go with the electric because I'm already going to the gym 3 times a week. I don't want to bring the gym to my house. Let's get cooking because I'm hungry. So we're getting ready to season up our sausage. Whether you ground it yourself or you bought it already done, the next step is to get the herbs and seasonings ready. And I wanted to stop real quick and just talk about our herbs and some options we have for dealing with herbs. Herb strippers, like so, they're really popular right now. People are started really using a lot more fresh herbs. From the simplest, and this is just a little bowl. You pull the herb through, and if you can see those little holes there, you just find the correct size hole, pull your herb through the stem, and everything is supposed to collect in the bowl. I like this one. It's really solid. It's just a solid, like a knife blade, but it's got the holes in there for the herb stripping, and it also doubles as, you can kind of cut some of those stems with that edge. Now, definitely not sharp enough to mince the herbs or anything, but still really handy, and it's a good solid piece. It's easy to stick in a pocket, so you can go out to your herb garden and actually cut those stems right off. I also like these. They're kind of they're very decorative. They look pretty cool. Again, they're really easy to slide into a bag to take with you somewhere. Put it in your pocket, move around the kitchen with, and it's always right there with you. And then the last one we have is kind of a cross between the blade and the decorative leaf. It's got that leaf shape and it's very decorative, and it snaps open, and you can really trim some stems with that. And again, when you lock it in a closed position, easy to tuck into a pocket, easy to stick into a bag with your knives, easy to take with you, and just really useful. So when you go out to the garden, you can just cut these right off the bush. Now, these herb strippers can range anywhere from $15 down to just $2 or $3. So whatever fits your price range, there's an option for it. So we're going to try a couple of these herb strippers right here, right now. Let's start with this one. It's I want to say I paid $3 for this one. So you just find the right size hole for your stem to go through, and it's just that easy. It zips right off. And when you're doing thyme, especially, this is really going to save you time. Thyme is one of the most time-consuming herbs to strip because they're such tiny little leaves. And if you have a bigger stem like so, you can find maybe a slightly larger hole. And this is that bowl. I don't know that it catches the herbs super great. I've got some over here, but it surely does do a decent job of collecting them. And then you can come back and get whatever extra little leaves are hanging out on that stem. But yeah, it did a pretty good job of stripping that stem off, huh? We'll go ahead and do some oregano. That's another time-consuming herb to strip. That does a really good job. Find the right size hole. It's usually that smallest hole, but this will go all the way up to like kale or spinach if you want to strip those leaves off. And yeah, it does a pretty good job. So there you go, guys. They might not always be graceful, but for sure, they always save you some time. Okay, so with spring and summer coming on, let's talk about burgers. These are going to be great for the grill, but I mean, they'll be good indoors too. If you've got a cast iron skillet, that's the best way to have a burger indoors. One of my favorite words in cooking and in the French language is mélange. Mélange means a mix, and that's what we're going for here. And it's kind of how I cook everything. A little bit of one thing is good, but a little bit of 3 different things is even better. For my burger grind today, we're going to use a pound of ribeye, 2 pounds of chuck, and a pound of top sirloin. Why the 3 different meats? Well, there's 3 different layers of fat to this. So top sirloin has about 5 to 10% fat to meat ratio. There's not a lot of marbling here. The meat is really red. You can see the darkness between these two and this guy. The chuck is more like a 20% fat ratio. You see some marbling in there, and you see this big fat vein of fat right down the middle. And then ribeye is one of the fattier pieces of meat. It's the creme de la creme of steaks, and because of all that marbling. That's just a whole lot of flavor. And all told, you're looking for at least a 20% to 80% ratio of fat to meat. That's the sweet spot for flavor. I know a lot of people have a strong aversion to fat, but we want some fat in our burger. We need some fat in our meat. Fat equals flavor. It contributes to you having a juicy burger, and it contributes to you having a tasty burger. Okay, we'll start with the ribeye. We're just going to cut this into 1-inch size chunks. 4 pounds of burger. It'll make a lot of burgers, but it can also make some other meals. You can make meatballs, you can make meatloaf, you can use it browned up to make bolognese. There's a lot of different applications here. So grinding it right at the beginning of the week, you get 3-4 meals out of it. On to our chuck. Same deal. Chuck roast, top sirloin. These are low and slow cooking processes. They're tougher pieces of meat. They're inexpensive compared to a ribeye, of course. But when you run it through the grinder, that grinder does a lot of tenderizing for you. It's going to chop this meat up really fine and make it so that it cooks at a relatively quicker pace. When they do cook, they'll leave some chew, some bite to the burger, and that's what we're looking for, a little texture. And last, our top sirloin. Got our push plunger. We've got our meat ready to grind, and a really large catch bowl so that even if we go really fast, it won't spill out onto the floor. So here we go, and let's see how the microphone does with this noise.
Now I'm kind of attached to my fingers, so you'll see me giving a lot of respect to this feed tube into the grinder because I want to keep all my fingers. And again, if you don't have access to a grinder, can't afford a grinder, feel free to just buy your own, pre-ground meat. Just keep that 20% fat ratio in your head, flavor, texture. The spice mixes we're going to add to these, they'll work for your ground meat or the store's ground meat.
And there we are, finished ground, 4 pounds worth. You can mix this around as you wish. The next thing to do is to portion it out.
Now there's a lot of different options for zip top bags and sizes, so portion this how you want to portion it. I go for a pound. That's usually the sandwich size zip top bags, and a pound freezes quick, it thaws quick, and it's just a good usable portion.
Burger mix for a pound of ground meat. We've got a tablespoon and a teaspoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of onion powder, tablespoon of thyme. Dry if you're going to freeze it, use it later. Fresh if you're going to use it fairly quickly. We've got a tablespoon of red wine and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. That's it for our salt. Now, I always put this into the meat and mix it in well, and that way you get some seasoning in every single bite. versus just salting the outside of the burger. You can treat a burger like a steak and that's fine, but I like to have that flavor through the entire burger and not just the outside. So I've doubled up on this because I'm doing 2 pounds of ground beef. But like I said, just massage that through there. Give it a good mixing. You'll have flavor in every bite. Okay, our next grind is pork for sausage. I'm just going to use a pork butt. That's a part of the pig's shoulder. And as you can see, it's got a decent amount of fat to it. It might not be enough fat, but there's a cool way to get around that I'll show you after we grind this. And again, we're just going to cut this into cubes to make it easier to go down the machine.
And then same process, and again, you can buy ground pork from your grocer if you don't have access to a grinder.
Okay, so we've got our pork ground. Remember I said we need some extra fat in there, and I'd show you a super cool secret trick. This is Chef's Best Friend, bacon fat. Run that bacon fat through a fine mesh sieve. Try and get all the meat particles out of it so it'll keep longer. You can add that right to your ground pork, like so. And I'd give it about a tablespoon per pound of meat. So I got 2 pounds of meat here. Just kind of massage that through. So what we have here is a teaspoon of fine ground black pepper, a teaspoon of kosher or sea salt, anything but iodized, a teaspoon of fresh parsley, a teaspoon of fresh basil, a teaspoon of fresh rosemary, a teaspoon of fresh oregano, a teaspoon of fresh thyme. Now, if you're going to make this and use it this week, use fresh. If you want to freeze it and use it later, then go with dry, because these will turn black if you freeze them. They won't be appealing. To continue, 1 teaspoon of granulated garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, optional, half teaspoon of cayenne or red pepper flake if you want hot Italian sausage, half teaspoon each of fennel and caraway seeds. As a quick aside, we're going to be using our mortar and pestle to grind those down. You're not looking for a super fine powder, but you surely want to crack all these open and get those oils out of those seeds. If you want to do larger amounts in a coffee grinder or even a smoothie blender, that's fine too. And our last is a teaspoon of red wine vinegar. Like I said, you just want to crack those seeds and let those oils flow. You can definitely smell it as soon as you get to that point. The great thing about the parchment paper, I can just pick it up like so. And dump it straight in. Give that a really good mixing. There you have it, Italian sausage. Also, it's that time of the year when we need to start thinking about the weather's going to start warming up and we need to start getting ready so that we can hit the grill running on that very first warm day, which here in Alabama we've already had a couple. So this is a really great barbecue rub. You can use this directly in your ground pork if you want barbecue pork patties, or you can use it as a rub on a barbecue or a butt or ribs. We start off with a teaspoon of white pepper, a teaspoon of coriander or cardamom. I'm using cardamom here. They're kind of interchangeable. They both have a lemon flavor to them and they add a brightness to the whole rub. A tablespoon each of garlic powder, onion powder. I'm using a Applewood smoked salt, a tablespoon of chipotle powder, and 3 tablespoons of paprika. Again, I'm using smoked paprika. 1 packed cup of brown sugar. Any of these ingredients that you can find smoked, use smoked instead. Once it's well mixed, it just goes into an airtight container. You can hold on to that for 3 to 6 months easy. This is an all-purpose grill mix. This is just all dry, all made ahead, and just sprinkle liberally on anything you're going to grill outdoors. We're going to start with 2 tablespoons smoked paprika, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of granulated garlic, 2 tablespoons of parsley, 2 tablespoons of thyme, 1 tablespoon of rosemary, a tablespoon of sage, a tablespoon of white pepper, 1 teaspoon of smoked salt, and 1 teaspoon of kosher salt.
Mixed all together, it looks a little something like this. And this is, again, just an awesome mix to keep next to the grill in a shaker and just put on anything you grill, be it vegetable or protein.
And real quick, guys, one last recipe. Breakfast style sausage, teaspoon of kosher salt, teaspoon of black pepper, teaspoon of thyme, teaspoon of nutmeg, teaspoon of rosemary, 2 teaspoons of sage, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar, and I highly recommend a half teaspoon of red pepper flakes. It's sweet, it's spicy, it's savory, it's everything you want in a breakfast sausage. By the way, it makes a really great sausage gravy if you know where to find a good biscuit recipe. Hint, hint.
That's it for this one, guys. Hey, make sure to check out RevQueenDaddy.com. You can actually get all the music that we use here on the channel straight from the source. And it never hurts to support the artists that give you entertainment. And as for the rest of the channel, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications, and just check us out on our other platforms. We're not monetized yet, but Lord willing, we'll get there. One of these days, sooner or later.